Ladies and gentlemen, good evening from Jerusalem. Good morning to our friends in the Western Hemisphere. Good afternoon to our European friends, and good morning to our friends in Australia and the Far East. Friends, Saturday, October 7th, 2023, will most probably go down in the history of the modern state of Israel as its darkest day. A day where Hamas terrorists executed hundreds of innocent men, women, children, and the elderly. A day where families were burned alive and when hundreds of young teenagers attending a music festival were shot in cold blood. Israel is at war with a cruel, inhumane enemy. Since Saturday, we at the management of the university have been flooded with hundreds of messages of support, and we thank you all wholeheartedly for your support. Your messages and your support mean a lot to us. Many of you offered their help, and naturally we will be in touch with those in the coming days. To talk about the situation, we are joined today by Professor Asher Cohen, President of the Hebrew University. Once his presentation is over, there will be time for questions and answers. Those who wish to ask can do it through the Q&A option. The questions will be collected by Francine and presented to Asher. And to open the session and present Asher, I call upon the chairman of the Board of Governors, Dan Schlesinger. Dan, please.
Thank you, Yossi, and thank you all for tuning in to this important webinar. I will not take a lot of time. I think we all want to hear from President Cohen, but let me just say a few words from my own perspective about watching what's going on in Israel from a distance from Chicago. As we all began absorbing the news, whether it was on Saturday for those of us who were not carefully observing the holiday, or on Sunday for people who were more respectful of Shabbat and Simchat Torah, we were all horrified as we began hearing more and more tales of atrocities being committed by Hamas terrorists in southern Israel. One of the things that I found somewhat comforting, somewhat reassuring, was the almost universal condemnation of these attacks that began coming in, even from sources that have not always been firm supporters of Israel, like the United Nations Secretary General, like many European countries. And as I say, that was somewhat reassuring that everybody recognized the extent of this horrible animalistic behavior that was being perpetrated by these terrorists in an organized fashion, sponsored by their leadership. What has started to concern me as time goes on is an erosion of some of that support, as we begin to hear of people in the United States, people in Europe, people around the world beginning to try to find ways to draw a moral equivalence between Israel's behavior, which does sometimes impact civilians, but always with regret, never as intentional, and always with respect and apology when that happens, and drawing comparisons between that and what Hamas is perpetrating, which is the intentional killing and horrible, horrible atrocities that I will not catalog here, but that Yossi referred to. And we begin to see it in some of the usual places, like on college campuses around the United States and in Europe. And I think it's essential that we, as supporters of Israel, as people who understand what's going on, remain unified in our approach and in our voices, and continue to express support for Israel total lack of any sympathy for what Hamas has perpetrated, and support Israel in every way we can. And the needs of the students at the Hebrew University, which I will let Asher describe, are great, many of whom are serving reserve duty, all of whom are impacted. One thing that's just dramatic is the few degrees of separation we all have with people who are suffering terribly because of killings or abductions or mutilations within their families. And we need to remain united and committed and steadfast in our support, and whatever way you can find, whether it's with your voice, with your pocketbook, we have to unite and support Israel. With that, I will turn it over to Professor Cohn.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Yossi. I'll start, despite the horrible things that happened in Israel, I'll start first by simply thanking all of you. It's really heartwarming to hear all the interest and the caring that we feel from you when you contacted us over the last few days. It's a terrible event, but to see all this friendship, commitment, love for Israel and for the Hebrew University is indeed heartwarming, and I would like to thank you for that, really. It's very important for us. And we can see here how many people attend. We understand that it's important for you, and we are happy for that as well. I'm not going to describe too much what happened in Israel, in the south of Israel, because most of you know it, but I'll say shortly this. It is an unprecedented event in the history of Israel. Right now, as we speak, we know already of more than 1,000 casualties from this event. The majority of them, even the vast majority of them, are civilians, unarmed civilians. This is something that never happened before at this scale, or even close to this scale. It's really our 9/11 of Israel and then some. We still are processing the event. It's too fresh to really fully capture the event, but it's a horrible, horrible event, not to mention the fact that those terrorists performed acts that are unspoken and that no one would ever have imagined anyone doing that. So this is what happened. It took Israel by surprise. No one was ready for that. That's part of the reason for the large number of casualties. And it's still happening, except that now Israel already got ready and is ready, and the situation is changing. Before talking about what's going to happen in the next few days, I'll just say that this event changed something forever. Because in the Gaza Strip, Hamas is the leader of that strip. And despite being an Islamist fundamentalist organization with terror on its ends, people were talking once in a while about the possibility of reaching some sort of an agreement with this organization. It no longer is the case and will never be the case with this organization. An organization that is doing such atrocities, it's not an organization that we can really negotiate with or reach any type of an agreement with it on any semi-permanent basis of any kind. It's sad because the Hamas is the leaders in Gaza Strip, but it's the case, and that is something that has fundamentally changed the situation. What's going to happen in the next few days is not entirely clear, but we already know from the past that Israel will respond already is responding, but will respond very strongly. In fact, we are quite sure that Israel will respond a lot more strongly than before, perhaps in ways that we never saw before, because the feeling within Israel is that this organization cannot continue to control Gaza. It's not clear whether it's possible to do it, how long it's going to take before Israel can do that, but the feeling, I think it's a consensual feeling within Israel, is that this organization must be removed if it's possible, and in any case, it must be without any real impact. It's easy to say, it's a lot harder to do, and what we are going to be witnessing in the next few days is a lot of activities around it. We don't know what are going to be these activities. Right now, the Hamas organization is targeted primarily from the air, but there may be more than that. It's even likely to be more than that. We don't know exactly what. We do know that it's going to be something quite big in the next few days, and it may last for quite a long time. Again, we don't know how long, but it may last for a long period of time. This is the situation as it is right now. We cannot say much more about it because we don't know. I have to say, in addition to that, that the situation around Israel is even more sensitive than that, because as you probably all know, we also have an enemy in the north, another terrorist organization, the Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, and it may get itself involved as well. If that is the case, then we are talking about a mega event that will be with many more consequences. I'm one of those eternal optimists, so I think that Hezbollah will be wise enough not to get into any serious encounter with Israel, but we don't know. It can happen, and if that happens, then we are talking about yet another scale of violence and confrontation in the north. Again, I hope that this is not going to be the case, and I'm one of those optimists that until the reality changes, I still believe in it, and I still believe that it's not going to happen, but I'm far from certain about that. Regardless, and in this I'm fully certain, when the dust will settle, Israel will prevail, not just in terms of power, not just militarily. Israel will prevail. We did face terrible situations in the past, and we always prevailed, and I'm confident that Israel will prevail, despite the fact that the last 9 months were, how shall I say it, trying. Still, I have no doubt that Israel will prevail. It may take weeks, it may take days, it may take weeks, it may take even months. I hope not, but it might. Regardless, eventually Israel will prevail. And the Hebrew University is an Israeli organization, an Israeli institute. So we are part of that as well. So let me tell you a few words about the Hebrew University as it is right now. In the original plan for the next academic year, we were supposed to begin the academic year next Sunday, on the 15th of October. That's when the academic year in Israel typically starts, about 1 week after the Sukkot holiday, and that was the original plan. As was mentioned, many of our students are reservists that were called by the army to serve right now. We don't know how many of them yet, but we are talking about a large number of those. And even some of our, a significant proportion of our teaching assistants were called as well. So we will have anyways problems even conducting many of the classes, because we need teaching assistants for many of the classes. So what we decided to do so far is to postpone the opening by 1 week We announced it already. We will start the academic year instead of on the 15th of October, on the 22nd of October. We did it in coordination with other universities. Many other universities were supposed to begin the academic year on the 15th, and all of them moved the opening to the 22nd. As you can imagine, we cannot be sure that we will be able to open the academic year on the 22nd of October, but it's still a distinct possibility, which is why right now this is the date in which we are planning to start the academic year. We also stopped many other planned activities. Some of them are obvious. So for example, we were planning to have this week all kinds of orientation meetings with the new students. We cannot do that. So we postponed it right now by 1 week. And again, hopefully we will be able to do it. But if not, we will change again next week to a proper date in which we can do that. More generally, the situation in Israel is relatively dynamic. Just to give you an example, because rockets are being fired once in a while, we do have Iron Dome. So in most cases, it's not, it doesn't create any substantial damage, but it's dangerous. And there is a difference, by the way, between the 3 campuses that we have in Jerusalem and the campus that we have in Rehovot, the campus of agriculture and environment. Jerusalem is relatively safe. Some rockets were actually fired to the outskirts of Jerusalem, but there has never been a rocket fired at Jerusalem itself. The campuses are in Jerusalem itself, so it's relatively safe. The campus in Rehovot is in the middle of Israel, not far from Tel Aviv, and it's not as safe. So right now, for example, for this week in Jerusalem, we allow people, administrative workers primarily, the administrative staff, to come to the campus, but we allow them also, upon their will, as they wish to work from home. The schools in Israel are also closed, so many of them need anyway to take care of their children. So this week, we allow administrative staff from Jerusalem to come if they wish to, or stay at home. I think the majority of them so far stayed at home, and we expect that to still be the case throughout this week. In Rehovot, on the other hand, we restrict strongly the number of administrative staff that can be in the campus, because we want to make sure that no harm can happen to them. And in Rehovot, there is a small danger, but there is a danger that something will happen, which is why we do that. And what we do more generally, the management of the university and very large teams from the university, we examine every evening what the situation in that evening is and decide what to do for the next day. And the management of the university meets in the morning, every morning, in order to see what are the recommendations of those teams and then announce what we are going to do. So we are trying to be as flexible as possible and react to the situation as it is. But if you ask for the bottom line is that we are not very active right now, and we don't expect to be very active, at least until the end of this week. What's going to happen next week is anybody's guess, but it could be quite similar. We don't know, and we keep the flexibility in order to react for the better or for the worse, depending on the situation. We also communicate continuously with our community members. I just finished an early version of a letter that we will send to the entire community tomorrow, and we keep updating them all the time about what's happening and what's not happening. In some ways, it's similar to other emergency situations, except that in this particular case, we are also all shocked by the events that took place in the South, and that has some sort of an impact of of what we are going to do or not do as we go along. You may ask what's going to happen after that. Once so-called normalcy or violence comes down and normalcy comes back, and that will happen. At the level of the country, there is no question that there will be questions asked about what took place on Saturday and the 2 days following Saturday, because we shouldn't be as surprised as we were, and we shouldn't react as slowly as some of the army units and perhaps others reacted as well. So there are genuine questions about the state of readiness of Israel, of the army, of the political system, everything around it. And those questions will be asked, but they will be asked only once we are done with the conflict part of it with the Palestinians. And then we'll see what happens. I cannot predict what happens. Some of it will be also politically inclined, and that these will be things that we will not get into because we are not involved politically. But there is no question that genuine questions will be asked, and there will be a very close scrutiny of what happened, why it happened, what it means, and what are the conclusions of that. I want to end this relatively short review by saying again, despite all of this, I'm optimist. I'm optimist because I see how Israel reacts now. I see we have volunteers all over the country. We have people, both army-related people that went to the south to fight and others that help in all kinds of ways. We see all over the place the spirit of Israel as we knew it. And this is, like your friendship, this is heartwarming. It shows that there is some genuine vitality in Israel, and that makes me optimist. I can also say that within the university, we see exactly the same spirit. Everyone is involved, everyone wants to help. We are all engaged, we are all committed, as we should be. So if you ask me about our future, not in the next few days or weeks, but beyond that, I'm clearly optimistic about it. We will have issues to solve. We have to help all of our students. We have to help people that their families were hit. We are going to have serious issues, and we are going to have a lot of work on our hands. It's going to take a lot of effort to do it in the right way, but I'm pretty sure that we will do it well, and that we'll give the answers as much as possible to all of those challenges, and everything will eventually be okay. More than okay. It will be good. So that's about it. Thank you very much for your interest, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that may be.
Thank you so much, Asher, for really wonderful words that help us cope with the situation. We have many, many questions from all over the world, so I will try to combine some of them because some of them have the same message, and that main message is, how can we help? We have from Michael Kurtz from the US asking, how can donors help families and students financially? How can the Friends Associations help with the situation at the university? How can we help spread the word? Questions of that.
Okay, so there is an easy answer. You know, this session was not planned or built to talk about donors or donations. But if you ask what we need, is we need help for our students. We will need to provide them with all kinds of psychological counselings. We will need to provide them with financial matters because many of them will struggle financially. We will need lots of things. And if you can help on that, that would be great. The more help, the better. We will need quite a bit of help. And if you can help us in that, that would be great for us, but primarily for our students, for our staff, from all of those people that were badly or will be badly impacted by the conflict, by the war, by everything that goes around it.
Thank you. We also have a number of questions.
I'll just add that in addition to that, one thing that Yossi, I think, mentioned, and that, or Dan mentioned, that is really good, is the fact that we see lots of support for Israel, and we hear lots of letters that support the Hebrew University from other universities. But one concern that we have is that in some universities, perhaps the minority of them, but some universities look at the violence that took place in the South as if it is one more step in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And there couldn't be a more serious mistake than that. Because what happened in the South is not one step. It's by many orders of magnitude, many orders of magnitude different. It's really an act of violence that the ISIS organization did. It's a crime against humanity that took place there. It's not at all at the level of the conflict, even not at the level of any violent occurrences that took place before. It's an atrocity, it's a crime against humanity, and there shouldn't be any type of symmetry whatsoever between steps that are taking place here or there and this thing. And unfortunately, in some universities, we feel that they are talking about casualties on the Israeli side and on the Gazan side as if murdering in cold blood full families and doing all of those atrocities that were done that are unspoken, in fact, is similar to that. So you can also voice your opinion about it. You can also say what you think about it and make sure that people understand that what happened here is fundamentally different. It's a crime against humanity that should be condemned in the strongest way possible forever.
I believe that Yossi Gal would like to add a word or two.
Just one word, realizing that there are so many questions about how can we help. Just to say that to Michael and the others that the Student Relief Fund will be launched in the coming days, and we'll get back to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yossi. Asher, there are also a number of questions that have to do with the Hebrew University and its efforts toward diversity and how we will be able to protect both the Palestinian and Jewish students on campus, maintaining their rights in a very charged environment. Could you please address that?
Sure, it's a challenge. It's without a doubt a challenge because tensions do exist. I actually think that right now when you're talking about diversity, you're not talking about the ultra-Orthodox. You're talking about the Arab society and the Jewish society in the campus, because that's where the tensions may take place or may happen. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge because emotions are high, and it could really spill into this. We will do everything that we can to prevent it. I truly believe that most of the Israeli Arabs, actually many Palestinians too, but most of the Israeli Arabs are horrified by what Hamas did just as much as we do. It's an act against humanity. It's not an act against just the Jewish people or the Jewish state or Israel. It's an act of, it's against humanity in general. So I think that most Arab Israeli citizens are opposed to it. I have to say at the same time that we will not be tolerant to members of our community that may express support for the violent atrocities that took place in the South. This is a singularity in which we will not allow members of our community to support it. You can have opinions about whatever caused it and everything that you want, but that act itself cannot be supported.
Thank you, Asher. Ike Sorkin from New York is asking whether many foreign students have sought to leave in light of
this is
crisis.
one more potential problem. Some students didn't arrive yet, and there is a possibility that they will not arrive at all. So we will have some issues in the Rothberg School. We also have many Israeli students that are part of an exchange programs abroad, and they want to come back. Some of them actually want to join their units in the army. Some of them want to join their families, and they want to come back, and that is again a challenge that we are going to face to help them come back. We cannot say for sure with any type of certainty at this point in time what's the extent of this. We already heard some. We hope that we can manage it. It depends on what's going to transpire in the next few weeks in Israel, but it is another potential problem.
We have so many questions. I will try to get to as many of them as possible. Stephen Creed is asking, has there been any considerable physical damage to any structures on any of the university campuses?
No. It's a simple answer. I'm fortunate to say it's a simple answer. We didn't have any hit to any of the universities' structures at all so far, and hopefully it will continue this way.
Let me see, there are many, many messages of warm support, and from our German friends, from Israeli friends, everyone. Again, a question about whether the situation will have any impact on the integration of programs for Arab students. I believe that you answered that question already, yes? We have a question from Yaakov Yaniv from Israel. I'll have to translate it. He's asking if Israeli academic institutions are doing any work to organize support amongst other academic institutions around the world. We've seen, you understand the question?
Actually, we are now writing a draft proposal of a letter that all the university presidents, all the presidents of the research universities in Israel will write the same letter that we are drafting. I'm actually even the one that is right now drafting it, in which we want to write to all the academic institutions. As I said, most of them already expressed support for us, and most of them understand what happened and the fundamental difference between what happened in the South and the general conflicts that we encounter here once in a while. But we want to make sure that people understand that what happened is really fundamentally different, and we are going to write a letter on which all the university presidents will sign to communicate with the universities around the world to make sure that it's fully understood by all of them.
Wonderful. And we have a Canadian participant Laurie May, who says she is happy to coordinate with Hebrew University and University of Toronto, as she is a graduate of both.
Well, actually, the University
thank
of
you.
Toronto, the University of Toronto president, I met him just a few days ago. He wrote to me personally. He is a great friend of the Hebrew University, as is the University of Toronto. I think we don't have any problems there. But thank you.
Julie Gal is asking if the Hebrew University is involved in helping students from Sderot or any other colleges that are in the direct line of fire, if we are considering taking them in for studies, offering them special programs.
We are now actually, everything is fresh. Saturday is just 4 days ago. And we now start to get more fully organized, not just at what happens in the university, but beyond. We have really excellent professional units, psychologists, social workers, and others. And we are now we start today to organize those units in order to be able to help both our community members and communities elsewhere. And there is no doubt that we will offer help, assistance to the people in Sderot, in Ofakim, in Netivot, all those towns, big towns in the south that suffered. And we will do whatever we can to help, not just with the community at the Hebrew University, but elsewhere. It's part of our duty. It's part of the Israeli spirit, and we are committed to do it.
Thank you, Asher. I believe that Dan Schlesinger would like to ask a question, and I will give him the floor.
Francine, thank you. I didn't want to ask a question. I wanted to come back to a question that was already asked, which is the one raised by Michael Kurtz and others that Yossi and Asher responded to, which is how can we who want to do something help? And there is this relief fund that's being set up and should be up and running soon. But there's no reason why people like me and Dr. Kurtz, who are itching to do anything we can, as we've been hearing about everything terrible going on, we want to do something right away. There's absolutely no reason why you have to wait. If you want to help financially, you can send money to your local Friends organization, whether it's the American Friends, the Canadian Friends, the Israeli Friends, any European Friends, any other Friends group around the world. Please do contribute financially. You can indicate that you want it directed to the student relief fund that's being set up. The need is certainly there, both for psychological help, for medical help, for financial help. As we know, many of our students have to work to, in addition to their studies, they have to work to make money to be able to afford to live. And those who are called up into the reserves are unable to do that. We'll have all kinds of need to provide help. And as I say, anybody who, like me, is just dying to find ways to help, don't wait. Do it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. We still have some questions outstanding. Can we get Asher back on the screen? I don't know where Asher went. There he is. Okay.
I see myself on the screen.
Okay. I missed you there for a minute. I have a question from Sarah Siegel from the US, who's very active in our alumni association. It's kind of long, but it's directed particularly to you, Asher. Thank you for your leadership in good and hard times, President Cohen. And we do love you and are thinking of you and all Israelis and praying.
That's good. That's good.
The question, if the Hamas psychology is about honor, how would you characterize the Jewish psychology? An Israeli family member told me yesterday, no matter how intelligent Americans might be, they don't understand the Hamas psychology. Americans say, but that's illegal, yet the Hamas psychology is all about honor. I'm not sure I understand the question, but you're a psychologist, so maybe you understand.
I fully agree with the first part of that note, but I don't think that the Hamas has any honor. They have a murderous ideology of fundamentalist Islamic kind, not the true Islam, a fundamentalist, horrible ideology. That's not honor. And I wouldn't call it honor at all. I don't understand that psychology. I really don't. I recognize it when it's there, but I don't pretend to understand the motives behind it. To me, it's totally crazy, lunatic. It's also against any value that I appreciate. So that's why I don't really even want to call it honor. It's murderous ideology. It's fanatic, and it's against humanity. That's why I think that Israel will not ever deal with the Hamas in terms of any kind of Israeli-Palestinian settlement. It's not a partner anymore.
Thank you. We have an interesting question from Priscilla Garcia, who I assume is from our Latin American friends. Since you mentioned working students, how do you see the economic situation for Israeli companies and employees, potential students? How can we help?
Well, the Israeli economy could be struggling for a little while. The costs of war are staggering. All those people that are in reserve duty and are not working will badly impact the economy. So we are going to go through a short period, I hope, short period, in which we will have also challenging economical issues, both for students that will have to find work and support themselves, which I think eventually they will, but they will need more money than usually, as we spoke before, and companies. All we can do is do our best. And I'm in here too. If in the end, I'm optimist. Israeli companies always showed resilience of the kind that we would like to see, and I'm absolutely sure that they will show that type of resilience in the future when we encounter those challenges, and hopefully we'll overcome them. I'm confident that it will happen.
Thank you. And I will just correct myself by saying that the question was from Germany and not from Latin America. We have a question from Hadar Papatrejas. Israel always maintains fairness and caution. Do you think Israel is capable of doing what is called taking off the gloves and conducting the military and political campaign this way?
Well, that's more a political question that it's difficult for me to answer. I don't know what it means to take off the glove. I'm pretty sure that the reaction of Israel will not be of the type that we saw before. It will be stronger than that. I'm going to leave to the politicians the decision what to do and how to do it, and trust them that they will know how to do it in a way that on the other one hand is justified by the situation, but on the other hand keeps our humanity alive.
Thank you. A question from Gabriela Kumar. Are there any facts or theories already emerging on why Israeli intelligence was not aware of this disastrous situation?
As I said before, these are questions that will surely be asked once the conflict is over, and should be asked, because we are all looking for answers to that. This is a surprise that most of us feel should not have happened. We don't know the answer right now. You need to really take a deep look into it to see what actually happened, what went wrong, and why it went wrong. And I'm absolutely sure that those questions will be asked, and inquiries to this will take place without a doubt.
Thank you. Martin Kessel asks, you mentioned students and research assistants being called to reserve duty. Could you please say something about faculty being called up for reserve duty?
Yeah, I'm sure that there are some faculty members that are being called for reserve duties. We don't know the numbers, by the way, right now. Remember, everything happened in the last 2 days, and people, when they get the call, they don't report to us immediately that they get the call. So we are now actually asking the units to look into the situation and provide us with the exact numbers. And I think we will know quite well within the next day or two what's the situation. But without a doubt, some faculty members, the younger ones, not people like me, but the younger ones, were called and are out there, without a doubt. I referred to the students and teaching assistants because they are at the right age where most people are being called. But there are faculty members that are also in that range or close to that range, and without a doubt, some of them are called or were called or will be called.
Thank you. Many of the rest of our questions are warm and wonderful words of support that we're getting from our friends around the world. I think that we can wrap this up if you'd like to give us closing remarks.
I want to again thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for your support for Israel. Israel is in here perhaps the main thing, and the Hebrew University, an Israeli institution that is proud to be an Israeli institution, which is part of this country. So thank you very much for your support. I hope to see you in the future in Jerusalem, possibly in the Board of Governors, or see you elsewhere when I travel around and see our friends around the world. But the main thing, it's so heartwarming to see all of you, to see the care, to see how emotional you are about us. It's very important for us. So thank you very much.